I came back to life when I was 4.5 years old, reappearing in my small bed just 3 days before the day I had died. The first thing I was aware of was the familiar softness of the cotton quilt against my cheek, my mind still thick with a fog that felt both ancient and immediate. From outside the small room, I could hear voices I recognized with a jolt of phantom memory. One belonged to my grandmother, the same woman who, in my other life, had wrapped my cold, stiff body in a straw mat and had it tossed onto the back mountain. The other voice belonged to my mother, the woman I had desperately searched for in a downpour, the search that had ultimately led to my death. My mother's voice was strained, thick with unshed tears. "This is the money your second son left for household expenses. Please, just take it. Consider it a token of his respect for you and Grandpa." My grandmother sighed, a long, weary sound. "If you have to go, then you have to go. My son is a fool and he has wronged you. Your aunt is in the kitchen making some flatbread for you to take on the road. Thank you for not blaming me," my mother said, her voice dropping. "As soon as I get settled, I'll come back for Amelia." My ears perked up at my name. I was beginning to understand, the pieces of my past and present life clicking into place. My father, Robert Miller, was the second of 4 sons. In the Miller family, a typical farming household, the eldest son was favored and the youngest was doted on, leaving my father and my third uncle, the two in the middle, to fend for themselves. During a famine years ago, my father and uncle had to leave home and beg for food just to survive. My third uncle, David, was fortunate enough to be taken in by a kind family and later joined the army, where his hard work saw him rise to the rank of captain. My father, however, had been on his own since he was a boy, and he'd learned to be tough. He had a reputation for fighting, and every troublemaker in the area knew better than to cross him. This reputation made his own family nervous, but the other villagers appreciated him. With Robert around, petty crime was noticeably lower. My mother was an educated young woman sent to the countryside from the capital. She had accidentally fallen into a river, and my father, who happened to be nearby, saved her life. That incident led to their reluctant marriage, and then to me. After the college entrance exams were reinstated, my mother studied hard and was accepted into a university in the capital. The story went that on the very day her acceptance letter arrived, my father was involved in a fight that left another man with a permanent disability, and he was arrested. My mother used his imprisonment as her chance to secure a divorce and a permit to return to the city, where, it was rumored, a childhood sweetheart was waiting for her. In my previous life, I woke up to find her gone. I cried and searched for her everywhere, getting caught in a terrible rainstorm. I developed a high fever, and by the time my consciousness returned, I was a disembodied spirit, a 4.5-year-old ghost. My grandmother and her family wrapped my body in a straw mat and had it dumped on the back mountain. A young boy named Sam, who lived at the foot of the mountain, found me and carried my body back to his small, dilapidated home. I floated there for days until my father finally returned. I watched, helpless, as he placed me in a small coffin and buried me on a gentle slope on the hillside. He kept a constant vigil by my tiny grave, and the grief stole the color from his hair, turning it stark white in what seemed like a single night. He stayed there day after day talking to me, telling me stories, worried I would be lonely or scared in the dark. He brought me food and toys, often forgetting to eat himself, growing thinner with each passing day as he drowned in guilt. I floated before him, trying desperately to hug him, to tell him it wasn't his fault, that his Amelia loved him more than anything, but my ghostly form passed right through him every time. But now it seemed I had returned. I was back in my body 3 days before my death. My mother was about to leave again, and soon I would be unable to find her. The instant I realized I could feel the quilt, my first thought was to find my father. But hearing the conversation outside, I knew he wasn't home. I lay back down, a cold fear creeping over me. My grandmother would dispose of my body. My mother was abandoning me. After a few more minutes of conversation with my grandmother, my mother came back into the room to finish packing. I watched as she located the box where my father secretly kept his savings. She sorted the bills and ration tickets inside, dividing them neatly into 3 piles. 1 pile went into her pocket, another into her shoulder bag, and the last 1 into her purse. and the third into her large suitcase. Then, with some effort, she moved the heavy wooden wardrobe to the side, pried up several slate tiles from the floor, and pulled out a metal cookie tin that had been buried in the dirt beneath. My eyes widened. My father, having raised himself, was always resourceful. Years ago, when skilled professionals were sent to the countryside, he had secretly traded them grain and meat in exchange for lessons. He learned how to repair cars, tractors, watches, and radios. It wasn't a secret that he did repair work for people, and the money he earned was all supposed to be in that box my mother had just emptied. It wasn't surprising that she knew about it, but the cookie tin was different. My father had taken me with him when he buried it, a secret between just the two of us. How did she know about this, too? Inside the tin were a small gold locket, a delicate gold bracelet, and a few small, shimmering goldfish charms he had crafted for me. He once told me he had secretly traded homegrown grain and wild ginseng he found in the mountains with wealthy families to acquire the gold for them. They were to be my dowry when I grew up. Because of how he got them, he had never told my mother. I didn't know what a dowry was, but I knew those things were a gift from my father to me. I watched silently as my mother took my dowry and packed it away in her suitcase before rearranging her bags one last time. My father had told me at the side of my little grave that after divorce, a father is just a father and a mother is just a mother. They are no longer a family. If that was true, then my mother was taking things that belonged to another family, and that felt wrong. From the east room, which served as the kitchen, my aunt's voice called out, telling my mother the flatbread was ready. My mother left again, pulling the door closed behind her. As soon as she was gone, I quietly slipped off the heated brick bed. I went straight to the luggage she had packed on the floor. There was so much inside. My dowry, my father's money, the beef jerky and dried sweet potato strips he had bought for me, and the radio and watch from the suitcase. Although my mother was the one who wore the watch and listened to the radio, my father had been the one to buy them. I ignored the sponge cakes and cookies my mother had bought for herself. I carefully removed the beef jerky and sweet potato strips and placed them back in the small cabinet. Then, clutching the money that belonged to my father, I hugged my cookie tin, grabbed the watch and the radio, and crawled back onto the bed, hiding everything beneath the quilt. It was better this way. If she was taking them for safekeeping, how would my father and I ever get them back if we couldn't find her? I had already accepted that my parents were separating and that I would only have my father from now on. I just didn't know if I would still be alive to see him when he came home. My mother returned a few moments later, carrying a cloth bag that smelled of warm bread. She saw that I was awake and paused for a second. Setting the bag down, she sat on the edge of the bed and stroked my hair, her voice thick with emotion. "Amelia, just wait for Mom a little longer. As soon as I'm settled, I'll come and get you. Don't blame me. I promise I will come for you." It sounded like she was talking to me, but it also felt like she was trying to convince herself. I didn't fully understand. When I was a ghost, my father had told me everything. After my mother left, she started a new family with her childhood sweetheart and had other children. I was fortunate, he'd said, because I was there to keep him company. But now she was saying she would come back for me. I was still small, and it was okay not to understand everything. I could ask my father about it later. Seeing her apparent reluctance to leave, I spoke up cautiously. "Can you wait for Dad to come back before you go?" If she didn't leave, I wouldn't go looking for her in the rain. If I didn't get soaked, I wouldn't get a fever. And even if I did get sick, she would be here to take care of me. I wouldn't end up cold and stiff in a little grave, and my father's heart wouldn't be broken. My mother seemed surprised that I had spoken. Her mouth opened, but then her expression hardened. "Amelia, don't be difficult. It's a good thing that Mom is going to college. You need to be a good girl and listen to your grandmother." No. I shook my head frantically. "I'm going to get a fever tonight. I'll be really hot and then really cold. Without you or Dad here, I'll get all stiff." "Amelia, I've told you before, good children don't lie." Her face grew cold, her voice sharp. She thought I was making things up to stop her from leaving. "No, Amelia is not a bad girl," I insisted, trying my best to explain. "Dad will be back soon, I held up my fingers, trying to calculate the exact day, but I couldn't. Tears of frustration filled my eyes. I could only grab her sleeve and repeat stubbornly, "Don't go, Mom. Wait for Dad to come back before you go. That's enough, she snapped, cutting me off. Your father isn't coming back, she yelled, her voice on the verge of breaking, not caring whether I could understand her words or not. He's been arrested. I finally got into college and your father went to prison. If I don't leave now, I won't be able to go. And if I can't go to college, I won't get a stable job. I'll be stuck here, digging in the dirt like a poor farmer for the rest of my life. Her eyes were red as she glared down at me. Why don't you want me to go? Why does no one want me to have a good life? You're just as selfish as your father. None of you Millers are any good. She seemed to lose all control, and for a moment I was too shocked to react. She began to pry my fingers off her sleeve one by one. I was holding on so tightly that she had to use a great deal of force. There was a sharp, sickening snap. Her hand paused for a fraction of a second, but only a second. Then she picked up her packed luggage, grabbed the cloth bag of bread, and walked out without another glance in my direction. Her back disappeared from my view. But I was telling the truth, I mumbled to myself, looking down at my small, chubby hand. The finger she had bent back was now an unnatural reddish-purple color. I whimpered, bringing my hand to my mouth to blow on it. Mom, it hurts, I whispered, tears finally streaming down my face. A light drizzle began to fall outside, which soon turned into a heavy downpour. The sheets of rain were exactly as I remembered them from my past life, when I had been searching for my mother. I curled up on the brick bed. The fire beneath it had gone out, but a faint warmth remained. I pulled the quilt tighter around me. I didn't want to get caught in the rain, didn't want to get a fever, didn't want to become a little grave. And I didn't want my father's hair to turn white overnight. I felt a pang of hunger. I wanted sponge cake, shortbread cookies, and crackers, but those things were gone. I knew my mother had packed some of them, but I didn't know where she'd put the rest. Using my uninjured hand, I pulled a dried sweet potato strip from the cabinet and nibbled on it slowly. I felt a small bit of luck. It was a good thing I had saved these, or I would be truly starving. In the middle of the afternoon, my grandmother pushed the door open. Seeing me with the sweet potato, she sighed. You silly child, why didn't you come out to eat? You missed the morning meal and now you've missed the afternoon one. It's a good thing you have that. Eat it for now, but don't forget to come for breakfast tomorrow. During the winter, with less farm work to do, the family only ate 2 meals a day. I was still a little afraid of her, so I just nodded obediently. Okay. I remembered that I was supposed to get an egg every day. I hadn't gotten one today, and I wondered if that meant I would get 2 tomorrow. Grandma was about to leave when I held up my injured hand. Grandma, my hand hurts. It's nothing. You'll be fine after a night's sleep, she said dismissively. The room was dim, and she probably thought I had just bumped it somewhere, a common occurrence for a child in the countryside. I wanted to explain further, but she had already left the room. It still really hurts, I whispered to the empty doorway. I glanced at the rain still pouring outside and didn't dare venture out. All I could do was blow on my hand again as more tears fell. I don't know how I eventually fell asleep, but I remember feeling that the bed, which had once felt so warm, was now terribly cold. The next day, the sun was shining brightly in a clear, windless sky. I struggled to get dressed and then peeked outside. The beautiful weather instantly lifted my spirits. The storm was over, which meant I wouldn't get caught in the rain and fall sick. And my grandmother hadn't lied. After a night's rest, my finger, while still crooked and an ugly purple color, didn't hurt enough to make me cry as long as I didn't move it. When it was time for the morning meal, I carefully made my way out of our room, avoiding the puddles on the ground, and entered the main hall where everyone ate. I must have been too slow because the rest of the family was already eating. On the table was a pot of watery sweet potato porridge and a plate of stir-fried cabbage. When Grandma saw me, she scraped the inside of the empty aluminum basin, but could only get a small spoonful out. She poured some warm water into the basin, swished it around, and then handed me half a bowl of porridge, so thin I could see my reflection in it. From the steamer basket on the table, she picked out a sweet potato no bigger than my fist and gave it to me. Amelia, you're still small. A big one would be a waste if you can't finish it, she said. I waited, but the egg from yesterday never appeared, and neither did today's. Everyone else at the table already had one. Next to my aunt sat her 3-year-old son, a chubby little boy with a pile of crushed eggshells in front of him. Across from me, my fourth uncle, Mark, who had just finished high school and was about to be married, was holding a half-eaten egg. When he saw me looking, he shoved the whole thing into his mouth. My Aunt Sarah rolled her eyes so dramatically they nearly disappeared. Grandma slapped Uncle Mark on the back irritably. Grandpa and my eldest uncle seemed completely absorbed in their food, their chopsticks moving in a constant rhythm. "Amelia, why aren't you eating?" Uncle Mark asked, his mouth full. "If it gets cold, you'll get sick." Get sick. I couldn't get sick. Suddenly, the egg didn't matter anymore. I looked down. There were no chopsticks or a spoon for me on the table, nor was there the little stool I usually sat on. At 4.5, I just stood there, watching my 7-year-old cousin, Chloe, who was also standing beside me. It seemed she always ate standing up. After a moment, I copied her, standing at the edge of the table. I held the bowl awkwardly, careful not to jostle my injured finger, and first drank the porridge before slowly eating the sweet potato. No chopsticks was no problem. My hand hurt too much to use them anyway. Besides, it would save them the trouble of washing an extra pair. I decided I would ask Grandma about the egg after I finished eating. My father had told me he gave her money specifically so she would give me an egg every day. The adults ate much faster than I did. As Grandma was clearing the dishes, she looked at me, still only halfway through my small sweet potato. "Amelia, you're a big girl now. It's time you learn to do some chores. Later, go with your cousin Chloe and learn how to wash clothes." In a farming family, it was expected that girls would start helping with household tasks from a young age. It was just that my father had always spoiled me. In the village, boys were generally prized. They were allowed to run and play, and they often received extra food. Girls, on the other hand, had to start working early and were given less. It was rare to see a girl my age washing clothes by the river, but not unheard of. For my grandmother to tell me to learn wasn't seen as abuse. It was simply the way things were. No one in the family thought anything of it. They all felt I had been coddled. In fact, they probably thought they were doing me a favor just by letting me live there. I froze. My father had promised me I wouldn't have to do chores like the other girls. He said he was going to send me to school, that I would be like the children in the city. But now Grandma was telling me this. I held up my right hand, which was still swollen, my finger bent at an odd angle. "Grandma, my finger hurts. I can't move it. I can't wash clothes." Grandma seemed busy and didn't even turn her head. "Suit yourself. This is how it is in our family. If you don't work, you don't eat." I was stunned. Chloe dragged a large basket of clothes out of the house. When she saw me, she called out, "Let's go, or we'll never finish. Quick, give me a hand." I looked at the huge basket, bigger than I was, then down at my own purplish, swollen, and unnaturally bent hand, and shook my head frantically. "I can't. It hurts." I showed her my finger. Chloe looked surprised for a moment, then a little disappointed and also a little envious. "With your hand like that, I guess you really can't work. Get better soon." She then dragged the enormous basket away by herself. Everyone in the house was busy with their own things and paid me no mind. I went to the main gate and sat on the threshold, not knowing which direction to look to be the first to see my father when he came back. Thinking of him, I looked down at my finger again and gently blew on it. When the village chief came to the house, the first thing he saw was the small figure squatting by the doorway. "Well now, Amelia, are you playing?" I recognized him and greeted him politely. The village chief smiled and pulled a piece of candy from his pocket for me. "Are your folks home?" As the one who had issued the certificate for my mother's divorce and her travel permit, he knew my parents were both gone, and he looked at me with an expression of pity. "Grandma and Auntie are home," I answered obediently. "Come on, I just need to talk to your grandma." Just as we entered the courtyard, we saw the door to my father's and my room wide open. My grandmother and my aunt were inside, rummaging through everything. My aunt felt the soft quilt on the bed. "This is nice. We can take it apart and make a new wedding quilt for Mark." Even the few patched-up old clothes weren't spared. "Your grandpa and the others can wear these when they're working," my grandmother said. "That's Dad's! It's all Dad's!" I cried out, rushing forward to grab the clothes. "Hey, you're just a kid. You don't understand," my aunt said dismissively, grabbing me and pulling me to the side. Then she went right back to discussing with my grandmother how to divide everything up. You can't take those. It's wrong to take other people's things. I kicked my legs, and as I struggled, I bumped my injured hand. The pain brought fresh tears to my eyes. I was powerless against two adults. What's all this? The village chief, who had entered unnoticed, finally spoke up. My spirits lifted. I looked toward the door, pleading, Mr. Village Chief, tell them you're not supposed to just take other people's things. My grandmother and aunt finally saw him and were suddenly embarrassed. Hey, you silly child, are we other people? My aunt said lamely. Grandma sighed and began to complain. It's just that Mark is getting married, and you know our family's situation. And with what happened to his second brother, we're all family. We're just borrowing a few things. The village chief understood, but he was just the village chief. He couldn't manage everything. He changed the subject. Your father-in-law took a fall and has been sent to the clinic. I came to let you know. It seemed the Miller family was having a run of bad luck. What? Grandma and my aunt forgot everything else and ran out of the house. Only after they were gone did the village chief look at me, his expression conflicted. I was a little happy that my father's things were safe for now, but I was worried they would come back for them. He looked at the tiny, doll-like girl in front of him and couldn't bear it. He explained the situation to me. Your Uncle Mark is getting married, and your family doesn't have a spare room. They'll probably use this one for the newlyweds. And as for the things in here, you're too little to protect them. He was an outsider, and I was just a small child dependent on the Miller family for survival. After a while, he came up with an idea. No one knows what your mom took when she left. While you have the chance, see if there's any money left. Take some and hide it for yourself. If anyone asks, just say your mom took everything. That way, when you're older, you'll have something of your own. Sighing, the village chief continued. He had asked around about my father's situation. It was uncertain what his sentence would be, but he had permanently disabled someone. It was likely just a matter of how long he'd be locked up. He looked at me. Child, he said, listen to me. You have to rely on your family to survive here, so if you're obedient and hardworking, your life will be easier. Once you grow up, things will get better. The village chief left. I hugged my father's army coat, the one they had almost taken, and thought hard about what he had said. Why did my uncle get to have my and Dad's room? Why couldn't I protect our things? Without a room, without a quilt, without clothes, what would happen to me? I would freeze to death. Just last night, I had been shivering from the cold. As I thought about it, only one idea remained in my head. I had to find a place to stay so I wouldn't freeze. I put the beef jerky and dried sweet potato strips in a cloth bag, stuffed the money and tickets into my pocket, hugged my dowry box, slung the bag over my shoulder, and rolled up an army coat that was bigger than me before heading out the door. From a distance, all anyone could see was a moving green bundle. At the foot of the mountain, by the gate of a dilapidated courtyard with a wicker fence, I squatted, struggling to poke my head out from the mass of the coat. I looked hopefully at the young boy in the yard. He was wearing an ill-fitting, oversized cotton jacket and was making a broom. The young boy's name was Sam, and he was 8 years old. He was an orphan, taken in by an old hunter who had since passed away, leaving Sam to live alone in this run-down courtyard. When I was a ghost, he was the one who had found me frozen solid on the mountain and carried me back to his home. It was at his house that I was finally reunited with my father. Sam noticed the movement outside and came to investigate. He was surprised to see it was me. He hurried over and freed me from the giant coat. Amelia, what are you doing squatting here? Sam knew who I was. My father, Robert, often went into the mountains and would occasionally run into Sam foraging for food. Seeing a young boy struggling on his own, my father would lend a hand, teaching him how to set traps and helping him sell his game. Thanks to my father, Sam managed to feed himself. I hung my head, not daring to look at him, and asked with a sliver of hope, Sam, I'm going to be homeless. Can you take me home with you now? In my previous life, when I was frozen, Sam had to carry me all the way back. It must have been tiring. This time, I had walked here by myself. so he wouldn't have to waste any energy. I must be more likable this way, right? Sam was stunned. What are you talking about? I quickly pushed the cloth bag I'd brought into his hands. I brought food and a blanket. I can take care of myself. Sam, if you could just let me have a tiny corner of your room, I'll only stay for a few days. Just a few days. I'll be very good, just as good as when I was frozen solid. I won't cause you any trouble. I just need to wait until Dad comes back. Sam snapped back to reality and pulled me into the house. What's going on? Tell me, who in your family is bullying you? He knew my father was in trouble and that my mother had left yesterday. Seeing me like this, Sam immediately assumed I was being mistreated. He remembered what he had gone through after the old hunter who adopted him died. Distant relatives he'd never met would show up and take things. If this little courtyard weren't so run down, he probably wouldn't even have this place to stay. I looked down at the floor. My fourth uncle is going to live in my and Dad's room, and Grandma and Auntie are going to divide up all our things. Sam's face grew darker. I looked at him, my voice getting smaller. An image of my father talking to him at my little grave popped into my head. I said, my voice lacking confidence, I have nowhere to live. Dad said we're family. That you're my little son-in-law. You can't abandon me. I peeked up at him, feeling both guilty and nervous. I had lied. That was something I had heard in my past life, but in this life, my father hadn't said it yet. Back then, my father would occasionally tease Sam, saying he had wanted to bring him home to raise as a little son-in-law for me. Sam looked as if he'd been struck by lightning. It took him a long moment to recover. Oh, right, okay, he stammered, his face turning beet red. You said yes, right? Did you really say you'd give me a little piece of your room? I held up my fingers to show a very, very small space, my eyes shining as I waited for confirmation. Sam's ears turned bright red as he gave a soft, mm-mm. His expression quickly returned to normal. Let them have your and Mr. Roberts' room at the Miller house. You can stay here with me from now on. This will be a home for both of us. Sam looked at the small bundle in front of him. He didn't want me to go through what he had. My father had always protected him, and now that he was gone, Sam would take care of his daughter. Don't be afraid, he said again, this time with determination. I'll take care of you. I stared at the handsome boy smiling at me, and my eyes started to feel hot. He said this was my home. He said my dad was a good person and that he would take care of me. The little boy was just as nice as Dad had said he was. Sam took me inside and asked for more details. When he heard that the Miller family wasn't home right now, he decided to take me back to their house. In my and Dad's old room, Sam began packing things into a basket he had brought. If there's anything else you want, let's pack it up quickly, he explained. Everyone in the village is at the clinic right now, so we have some time. Old Man Miller breaking his leg was a big event, and all the idle villagers had flocked to the clinic to watch the excitement. There wasn't a soul on the road. My eyes lit up, and I quickly started pointing things out. My father's clothes, quilts, the thermos, and enamel mugs. We would take everything. Sam packed the most important things first and told me to wait while he took the first load back. He ran back and forth 5 times before we had moved most of it. Except for the heavy furniture, we took everything we could. Before we left, Sam messed up the room, left a few different-sized footprints, and erased our tracks, making it look like a group of people had ransacked the place. I watched him the whole time, my eyes filled with admiration. He felt my gaze and became a little embarrassed. Don't tell anyone we took these things, he whispered. Otherwise, they might try to take them back. Okay, I won't tell, I said obediently. When my grandpa was brought home from the clinic, the family saw the door to the west room wide open. Inside, everything was a mess. Besides the furniture, anything useful was gone. My grandmother let out a wail, and my aunt slapped her thighs and screamed curses. A crowd gathered, whispering among themselves about the shameless thief. Sam had helped me hide everything and then made me repeat what to say if anyone asked. Once he was sure I had it memorized, he brought me back to the scene. I watched my grandmother and aunt crying and shouting, and for some reason, I felt very happy. But then I thought about our room being taken over, and tears of grievance started to fall. Poor thing, a villager said, seeing me cry. Her mom was gone, her dad was in jail, and now thieves had stolen everything. How was this little girl going to survive? Sam wiped my tears. Seeing us together, the villagers felt even more sorry for us. They were both orphans now. No one suspected that a 4.5-year-old girl had anything to do with it. Back at the rickety little courtyard, Sam showed me his stash of food. Don't be scared. We have grain, and I collected chestnuts and dried some vegetables. Plus, with the beef jerky and sweet potato you brought, we won't starve. I nodded happily, then remembered something and pulled the money and tickets from my pocket. We have this too. It's Dad's. Dad said he earns money for me, so we can use this. Sam was surprised. He spread the money out and counted carefully. There was $150 plus ration tickets for grain, cloth, oil, and sugar. With all this, he felt the weight on his shoulders lighten. I'll hide this for you. When you're older, I'll send you to school. Okay. Dad also said he would send me to school. I nodded. Sam then pulled out a wooden box containing his own savings, $37.36. This is enough to last us for a while, he said, laying out his plans. He was still a child, but he never expected any help from the Miller family. After the new year, he would be 9 and could do heavier work in the fields to earn more grain. He would gather more from the mountains. They would definitely both survive. I'll listen to you, Sam, I said, feeling very secure. Sam seemed touched. I thought your educated mom would have taken all the money. It was actually kind of nice of her to leave some for you. She didn't, I mumbled. I stole it back. I poked my fingers together guiltily. Good job, Sam said with a grin after a moment of surprise. I was happy to be praised and pointed to my cookie tin. Dad said this is the dowry he saved for me. It's from my dad. Dowry? Sam fell silent, his face flushing. It was at that moment that he finally got a clear look at my hand. It was black and blue, and the finger was still bent at a very unnatural angle. Sam was shocked. What happened to you? It had been like this since yesterday, so I had almost gotten used to the pain. But when Sam asked, all the hurt came rushing back. Mom was leaving, and I held onto her clothes. She pulled my hand away, and it ended up like this. I blew on it again, telling myself it didn't hurt. Sam's face turned grim. He grabbed my wrist and started to pull me outside. But then he remembered the dowry box. He opened the tin, and the gold inside gleamed. He was stunned for a moment, then quickly stuffed the money inside, hid the box under a loose stone slab, locked the door, and took me straight to the local doctor's clinic. The village's barefoot doctor was surprisingly skilled with bones. When he saw my hand, he frowned. What took you so long? He started to say more, but seemed to realize something and swallowed his words. He bent my finger back into place, and the pain was so intense that tears streamed down my face. Then he splinted it with a small piece of wood. If you don't want to lose this finger, you'd better behave. Keep it splinted like this until it's straight. The doctor's face was still grave. My hand seemed to be in serious condition. Sam nodded solemnly. Later, we overheard the doctor telling someone that he had mentioned my injury to the Miller family, even exaggerating its severity. They were surprised, but no one suggested I should come back to their home. Since I was too injured to work, bringing me home would just be a waste of food. They figured when I couldn't survive on my own, I would come back looking for food. On the way home, Sam looked at me with a worried expression. But I was happy. If the Millers weren't looking for me, I wouldn't have to go back and be frozen solid. Sam and I continued to live in the small, rundown courtyard. The fourth Miller uncle, Mark, got married before the heavy snows came. We were too busy gathering firewood and mushrooms and raiding squirrel nests for nuts to pay attention. We gathered anything edible we could find. Sam was very frugal. We never ate the wild game we caught, instead trading it with the village chief for grain. Before the new year, we had added half a basket of sweet potatoes and several pounds of different grains to our stores. Every time we traded, Sam worried I would crave meat, so he would take out one of the dried meat strips we had saved and share it with me, most of it ending up in my stomach. We only stopped going into the mountains when the snow fell heavily. The snow was particularly bad that year, blocking the gate and turning the wicker fence into a high wall. We couldn't even get out. Sam built 3 snowmen for me in the middle with him and my dad on either side. making it feel like Dad was always with us. Every day, Sam would sweep the snow off the roof of our fragile little house, hoping it wouldn't collapse. In the blink of an eye, it was New Year's Eve. In the afternoon, Sam minced the 2 ounces of pork the village had given us and mixed it with cabbage to make dumpling filling. We huddled around a brazier, clumsily wrapping dumplings while sweet potatoes roasted. Since my finger was splinted, the dumplings I made were especially ugly. Sam was so disheartened by their appearance that his eyes turned red. I comforted him. "I'm still little. When I grow up, I'll make beautiful dumplings for you, Sam." "Okay," he smiled, but a tear rolled down his cheek. "Sam, don't cry," I said. Just as I was about to comfort him, a loud bang echoed through the air. The roof and ground seemed to shake, and dust rained down. Sam swiftly grabbed me and pulled me under the table. I only had time to grab the bowl with our remaining meat filling. After a moment, he said uncertainly, "Maybe something collapsed." We waited a bit longer, then pushed open the door. A fierce wind whipped up a blizzard. The room next to ours had been half crushed. Standing in the doorway of the only intact room, we both felt a wave of relief. The noise attracted some villagers. "We're fine," Sam shouted back. "The collapsed room was empty." "Okay. Old Man Lou's house also collapsed and people are buried. We're going there first. We'll come back for you later," the villagers yelled before rushing away. Sam and I looked at each other. "Come on, let's go back and finish the dumplings," he said. Back inside, the dumplings on the table were covered in dust. I felt like crying. "They're still good. We can just blow the dust off," Sam comforted me, and I nodded. He then took out the dough we'd saved for the next day and started making more wrappers. I think I figured out how to make them look better. I'll make a few nice ones for Amelia. Since Amelia is so pretty, she should eat pretty dumplings too. Amidst the chaos of the collapsed houses, a jeep drove into the village. Robert Miller, the man everyone thought had been arrested, got out of the car. The driver, a soldier, quickly explained. Robert hadn't been in a petty fight. He had helped his third brother, David, who was on a mission to apprehend an enemy agent. He had been gone so long because he was assisting the authorities with an investigation. The villagers were stunned. Robert rolled up his sleeves to help dig people out, intending to ask about his daughter, but he found them all evasive. A knot of dread formed in his stomach. He ran straight to the Miller family home and burst into the West Side room. The furniture was familiar, but the layout was strange. Bright red wedding decorations were pasted on the window. He gave a cold laugh and turned to face the family members who had followed him. "Where is Amelia?" Uncle Mark and his new wife took a step back guiltily. Eldest Uncle Lynn rubbed his hands together. "Second brother, don't get excited. Amelia has been playing with that kid at the foot of the mountain. She's over there." My father's face was grim. He walked back into the room, grabbed a stick, and started smashing everything in sight. He then pulled out a box of matches, lit one, and poured kerosene from a lamp over the fire. He stood blocking the doorway, moving with such speed that before anyone could react, the room was ablaze. He beat back his brothers who tried to stop him, leaving them with bruised faces. Grandma rushed forward, pounding on his back and crying, but he acted as if he didn't hear. Only when the flames were engulfing half the room did he stride out of the house and break into a run, leaving the cries and curses behind him. Meanwhile, in our small courtyard, Sam and I were boiling water for our dumplings when we heard a commotion. "Leo, is that my aunt and grandma shouting?" I asked. "It's too cold to go out," Sam said, looking at the snow piled high against our gate. "It's better not to get involved." I agreed. He patted my head. "Amelia is such a good girl." I beamed. Dad also says Amelia is the best, prettiest, and cutest. Then my mood dipped. I wondered when Dad would actually be coming home. Sam just looked at me and smiled, about to say something when he burst out laughing. I had a dusting of flour on my head and had no idea how silly I looked, but I giggled along with him. When my father arrived at the little rundown house, he saw the collapsed, snow-covered building, and his eyes widened in terror. His fists clenched. Hearing the commotion, a villager who had followed him called out, "Second brother, Amelia and the boy are fine. The room that collapsed wasn't the one they were in." Hope ignited in his heart. His gaze fell on a felt mat covering a haystack. He strode over, yanked it off, and laid it across the wall of snow surrounding the courtyard. Sam and I heard the noise and poked our heads out. We saw a familiar figure climb over the snowdrift. I stared, thinking I was seeing things. I instinctively started running towards him. Dad! But I wasn't a ghost anymore. The snow was deep, and with one step I sank in up to my waist. Sam quickly pulled me back. My father, who had just made it over the wall, saw us on the porch. "Amelia, don't move! Wait for Daddy!" he shouted. He leapt from the snowdrift and trudged through the deep snow, running towards us. I threw myself into his arms. He held me, and I held onto Sam's hand, just like the 3 snowmen that had stood there all winter. Inside, my father looked at the clothes his daughter brought him, the familiar mugs on the table, and the quilts on the bed. A smile spread across his face. He ruffled the hair of both children. "Well done, you two." After changing, my father held me tightly, still shaken. Sam handed him a cup of warm water. "Hey, buddy," my father said to Sam. "I've got to thank you. From now on, you're my sworn brother." Sam was a bit confused by the sudden switch from being called a kid to a brother. But it didn't matter. They were all family. The villagers who had followed my father helped clear a path into the courtyard. Seeing the happy family of 3 inside, they smiled. "It's good you're okay. It's good you're okay." Soon the villagers left. Dad mixed more dough and cooked all the dumplings, even the ugly ones we had made. I was the only one not looking emotional, happily eating the most beautiful dumplings made by my dad and my new brother. After the meal, my father chatted with us. It was only then that I found out what happened at the Miller house. When he saw what they had done, he set the whole room on fire. I secretly let a smile creep onto my face. He couldn't help but laugh. "Are you that happy?" "Yep, super happy." I hugged him. "Dad is the most amazing. They were bad. They tried to steal our room and our clothes. It was a good thing I was smart enough to come find my brother, otherwise I would have definitely frozen solid." My father's expression turned grim as he quietly pieced together what had happened. He already knew about the divorce. He had given his consent while he was away. But what had happened to me was something he had never imagined. I chattered on, blissfully unaware. When he heard that my mother had tried to take the dowry he had prepared for me, his face darkened. However, none of that compared to the fury he felt when he heard how my hand had been injured. The coldness in his eyes was almost tangible. "Dad?" I sensed his mood change. A dad like this reminded me of when he used to guard my little grave. "Daddy's here," he said, his voice soft. "It will never happen again." He took my splinted hand, which I had hidden in my sleeve, and held it carefully. He had noticed it earlier, but never imagined the truth would be so painful. It was only now, talking about it, that all my grievances came flooding back. "Dad, it hurts. It hurts so, so much," I said, holding up my finger. "I need you to kiss it better." He held me close. "Okay, Daddy will kiss it better," he whispered. Throughout the holiday, the 3 of us stayed at Sam's place. My father took me to the clinic once. The old doctor looked at my hand with a hint of regret. "It's recovering well," he said, before speaking privately with my father. We could faintly hear the doctor sighing. "You just came in too late, and then it got injured a second time. If you had come earlier, it might not have left any permanent damage." I didn't know what permanent damage meant, but Sam's face turned pale, full of pain and self-blame. My father came out, picked me up, and didn't mention my hand again. "What do you want to eat, Amelia? Dad will go find some for you." He then looked at Sam. "You too. From now on, the 3 of us are a family." I happily listed all the snacks I had craved when I was starving. My father agreed and went out, returning with everything I wanted and several dozen pounds of grain. Over the next few days, he was very busy. One day, he came back in a very good mood. He told us he had legally had himself adopted out of his family. What had happened to me had created a deep rift. He didn't want me to be hurt ever again, so severing ties was the only solution. He explained it simply. Getting adopted just means Amelia has a new grandpa. My new grandpa was just a name on a piece of paper, a man who had passed away without children. This meant there would be no grandma to control my food, no uncle to steal my eggs, and no one to make me do laundry. I didn't fully grasp it, but my father was happy, so I was happy too. The Miller family came to cause a scene. but my father fended them all off. After that, they never came to our courtyard again. Just after the new year, our family of 3 left the village together. As a reward for his service, my father was given a job at a steel factory in the city, and our household registration was transferred. The first thing he did was sell one of the big goldfish from my dowry and take me to a major hospital. We went to several cities seeking treatment for my finger, but it seemed there was no complete cure. For everyday tasks, my hand was fine, but my father and Sam were always concerned and wouldn't let me do anything strenuous with it. My father only used the city job as a stepping stone. When economic policies were relaxed, he transferred his factory job to the village chief's son as a thank you and started his own business. He was a resourceful person with connections everywhere, and he quickly amassed a large amount of capital. He never forgot the sight of me living in a collapsing house, so whenever he had money, he would buy houses all over the country, all in my name, terrified that I would one day be kicked out with nowhere to go. Houses were demolished, and we got more houses in return. By the time I graduated from college and married Sam, the number of property deeds I held had reached a staggering figure. In the year 2000, I graduated with my master's degree and became a university lecturer. Sam had skipped several grades, finished his doctorate, and started working at a research institute in the capital. We settled there together, living in one of my properties. One day, I had to go with my dad to handle paperwork with an agent for a rental property. As we were leaving, we ran into a woman who wanted to rent a room. She was a plainly dressed, middle-aged mother with a young woman in a shirt dress. The mother held up her right hand, which was missing 2 fingers, and pleaded with the agent, "Just this single room. Can you make it any cheaper?" She complained about how hard it was for her daughter, a recent college graduate, to find a job, and how she and her husband were both laid off. I stared at her hand for a second, then my gaze shifted to her face. Her features were vaguely familiar, but the years of hardship had clearly taken their toll. Compared to my successful and vibrant father, she looked like she belonged to a different generation. We didn't pause our steps for even a moment. My father smiled and asked, "What do you want to eat? Dad will make it when we get home." For all these years, he and Sam, pained by my hand injury, had taken care of all the housework, never letting me lift a finger. Just as I had countless times before, I happily rattled off a long list of dishes. Sam said he doesn't have to work overtime lately, so he'll be home to eat with us. "That's wonderful," my father said, also very happy. The 3 of us, since that day long ago, had always been an inseparable unit with no room for anyone else. The agent who saw them out remarked to the rental agent, "Mr. Miller owns several buildings in the capital, yet he still cooks for his daughter himself. He really dotes on her." "Wow, several buildings?" the rental agent exclaimed in shock. "Mom, why are you crying?" The unfamiliar young woman's voice drifted over. "Oh, it's nothing. Something just got in my eye." I heard that voice from deep in my memory, now faint and distant, say. I didn't stop walking, my arm linked with my dad's, and just smiled at him. I didn't ask a single question. How that woman had injured her hand was no longer important to me. We each had our own lives, and it was for the best that they remained separate, with no connection between them.